to talk a little bit today about how to sound like a mandolin player. And what I mean by that is that I feel like every instrument has a unique voice. Mandolin has a unique voice. There are some things that mandolin can do better than any other instrument. There's some things that banjos can do better than any other instrument. There's things that guitars can do better than any other instrument. And so when I play, I like to find the voice of that instrument rather than just playing. For instance, if I was to get a piece of sheet music, the Fiddler's Fake book or something like that, and it's got your lines and it's got little dots going across it, and that's it, that's the melody, as the melody would be played on a piano or a violin or a mandolin or a guitar or anything, but without regards at all to the uniqueness of the instrument. So, for instance, what I mean is something like this, like what I started off with there, just making a little bit of that the mandolin noise. There's a G note here, and you can play that G note. But it's better on a guitar because you got more room to do it. But you could play this G in several different ways. You could play that G all by itself. You could put the other G on top of it. You can do a double stop up here with the B. And you can do downstroke sort of thing. That, to me, is what is unique and distinct about a mandolin sound. Nothing else, in my humble opinion, really does that kind of thing better than a mandolin. So that is a mandolin sound. That sounds dumb on guitar. Banjo just can't do it. Just can't do that kind of tremolo thing with the double strings, you see, because the mandolin has the double strings, and so you need to take advantage of that. So that's kind of what I'm getting at here. Now, so let's take a tune, for instance, like St. Andrew real quick. And, the melody goes... Okay, that's what I mean by learning it off the Fiddler's Fake book. That's your single note. There's nothing mandolinistic about that. As opposed to, let's say, how could we mandolinize that thing a little bit more? So I know in guitar, for instance, I use strums a lot. So in guitar, I'd use a strum on that to bring the chord. So what happens if we strum that a little bit? Just off the top of my head, that to me makes it a little bit more mandolinistic. I did a tremolo there, a tremolo, instead of a lick. I tried to do a little bit of the strum thing, which at the beginning, which is your double stop. So, open D, a fretted D, and the F sharp note, which is pretty much what I just did up here in the G, isn't it? It's the same thing. So I just took that down to the D. And that gives you a mandolin sound. You know that you're playing a mandolin. You got those stack of notes that you can't get that way in any other instrument. And it gets you away from the picky thing. So it's fine, but it's picky. Okay? So that's one way to approach it as a mandolin thing. Make it a little bit more mandolinistic. I worked hard at trying to do that rather than over the past years when I'm trying to get to sound more like a mandolin player and less like a guitar player playing mandolin or somebody just reading notes off of the sheet music and playing the notes. I'm trying to get more and more as to bring the unique sound of the mandolin up to the forefront. Well, one of the things that I've discovered early on that I'm really just now starting to really explore is this weird lick. I have never seen this lick before, and I'm sure I've heard this, but when you're hearing things, sometimes it's like, well, that's different, and also sometimes when things go by so fast, I just hear like a blur of notes. To me, it's like listening to a watercolor. I don't hear distinct pinpoints of notes like some players do. I hear kind of a wash of sound. And sometimes it's tricky for me to pull out exactly what's going on, even though I say, well, that doesn't sound quite right or something's different. It's hard sometimes to hunt that thing down. That's really the only reason I have all these electric guitars. I don't really play electric guitar, but what I like to do is find out where those notes live. Where does the Stevie Ray Vaughan notes live? Where do the Hendrix notes live? And how do those guys get their kind of sound? So I'm fascinated with styles. To me personally, I think that would be the pinnacle of success as a musician, is to have a style that is so distinctive that you can pick it out instantly. So I watched a documentary on B.B. King, and they asked, 5 or 6 great guitar players, how long does it take before you know it's B.B. King? And they're all one note, one note, one note. There's something about B.B. King's style where he can play one note and you go, that's B.B. That's style. And again, I've mentioned this before, but one time at Merlefest, about 97, 98, 99 or something, Dan Miller and I, the editor of Flat Picking Guitar Magazine, we arrived at Merlefest and we were walking down the line of tents. And I didn't know who was on stage and anything like that. There was a band playing, and they were pretty country rocky bandy. And then I heard this banjo, and I said to Dan, I didn't know Earl Scruggs was here. And yeah, it was Earl Scruggs and playing with Marty Stewart, and of course they're doing Volume and Breakdown. But I thought about that later, and I said, Earl's style was so distinct, so unique to him, that I recognized him instantly as Earl Scruggs on the banjo. And later on I thought, why is that so? Why did I instantly say that was Earl and it wasn't Bela Flack, or it wasn't Tony Trischka, it wasn't Rob McCrory, it wasn't a dozen of other really, really good banjo players? I knew instantly that was Earl Scruggs. Tony Rice is playing, and you go, instantly, Tony Rice, That's style. And that's the kind of thing that I think is the pinnacle in a musician, as opposed to somebody that plays really good and you think, who's that? You don't really recognize them as such, as having a style. So I'm fascinated by style. And along with that style thing is that relates to this topic here of, I want it to sound like a mandolin, and I want it to sound like a certain mandolin style. I don't want it to sound generic and vanilla. I want it to have something where it'll never happen. But ideally, someone would say, oh, that's Kimsey playing. And you would have a style that's so unique and so, unique and brings out the instrument. David Greer, David Greer is a great example. I mean, there's a guy that really brings out a guitar, an acoustic guitar's voice, I've heard him play electric guitar and stuff, and, he's a great musician and that kind of thing, but when David plays acoustic guitar, it's like, man, that guy understands an acoustic guitar, you see. That's what I'm after here, is a style. So, I was looking at this thing on the tab, and I go, I've never seen a lick like that ever before. And basically what this lick does, it has one note on this end, it's got a different note over here, it plays that note again, and then it goes back to the original note. So if you were to take this, I would normally play a folded scale, where you would go. You would go folded scale. Just going down the scale, you would go, I'm in D minor. That's a folded scale. We've all heard that. We've all played that kind of lick. There's nothing really distinct about that. I can do that same scale on guitar, banjo, mandolin, anything, bass even, it's a folded scale. But when I saw this thing on the mandolin tab, I go, what's that? What's going on with that? And what does that sound like? And there's this thing. And so instead of doing, you do this. And that's still part of the folded scale. So you start on a D, A with the upstroke, A with the downstroke, and D with an upstroke. So this note, this note, this note, same note again in the back of the original. 2 notes, played 4 times. And I looked at that tab and I could not translate that into the sound. And I also was wondering, why in the world are they doing that? Why don't they just play the folded scale? Why don't they just do that? I've never seen a mandolin player. I've never been to a lot of workshops, lessons, I've never seen anybody really address that as to what the goal of that kind of thing is. But I got Joe Carr's book on Monroe-style mandolin, and he addresses it. And he says what's going on there is you are playing a lot of notes still, but not much movement. So it's easier on your left hand because there's not much movement going on, but you're still getting the sound going. And I go, okay, I gotcha. And the syncopation is what's tricky for me, at least until you get it down under your fingers and you start hearing it. But you could go like this. Just take those 2 notes, D and A. You could go. You see, you could do that, and that's not syncopated. But this is. It's hard to do. There's the difference between those two. And I did the same thing on the C. Instead of doing a folded scale on the C, I did C, G, G, C. Like that. Once you start to hear that, then you go, I've heard that sort of thing in the songs. Monroe does this a lot. And it was, Monroe-style mandolin, that's where I got it. And what's tricky about it is the fact that this second D note just comes in, just sneaks in. And then you're instantly over to the other note. So okay, that's what it sounds like. Now, to me, that is definitely the only place I've ever seen that kind of lick ever is on mandolin tab. So I've been working at that, trying to get that where it's natural. And here's a place, it's really kind of fun because here's a place where I used it was on Lonesome Fiddle Blues. And I do this lick where I go up the neck. I'm trying to kind of steal the idea that Vassar Clements did on the with the Sugar Being Broken, and on his second break he does this real high lick, and I'm not getting the exact notes. I'm even trying to. I'm getting the idea of that, of going up high and then doing a descending lick going down here. So I do it like this. And that's just, there's the D. And I get an F here and an A to finish up the D minor. And then the C comes in here with a hemiola, which I wanted to steal from the electric guitar thing to practice it. And I thought it fit really good in there. So an E, a C, a G. that. And then I'm doing an A to the C again to this F. Now there's a place where instead of doing that, you could do this. You can do it like that. So instead of going, you could do this. And what it does is a little less movement with that left hand, but you're still getting the notes in there. So, all right, and then I go to lick back here. And I used to do it like that, which was a folded scale. So I started thinking, it's easy to do that as this. I don't know what to call this lick. I call it the inside out lick because of this one, and then these two, and then this one again. So it's like a sandwich, It's a sandwich lick is what it is. You got bread over here, you got your meat in the middle, and you go back to the bread again. So it's a sandwich lick. So I thought, well, I could do the sandwich lick in there instead of a folded scale. So instead of going, I can do this. And I get to hold this down and do a like that. To me, that gives that a really mandolinistic sound, as opposed to just being a string of licks that you could play on the piano. You could play any of these notes on piano if you wanted to, but I have never seen piano music do that kind of sandwich lick before. It would tend to do a folded scale or a linear scale or something like that. So that little lick to me is very much a distinct mandolin lick. So try it and see what you think. Listen for it in the recordings and practice it. Now, what's fun about this is that when you get that down, which I don't, I'm almost getting it down. I need it instinctively, which is a little tricky because, like I said, it's a unique lick that I haven't played or seen anywhere else except in mandolin tablature. Sam Bush plays it on that. Where it goes to the middle part. There it is. There it is. See, he's doing it there. That note, that one twice, and then this one sneaks in. And you hear that and you immediately think of mandolin. I do. So, when I started getting it down, I started hearing it at other places. But it's kind of cool because you can go over here to this little section here where I have an F and a D and an E. And you can play with all kinds of combinations on just those three notes. So I could go, or I could go. So, a sandwich lick on the E and F. Golly, for practice, what I need to do is sit there and go through all the little possible combinations It's using just those 3 notes. But you can do all that without doing a lot of movement here. The right hand, of course, is going nuts, but you can handle that. So it's tricky. Just those 2 notes back and forth even. E, F, F, E, F, E, E, F. You see? That's a tricky little lick there, and you're not doing anything, but it's very syncopated. So try some of that stuff, the sandwich lick, See where you can get it. What I have discovered, too, is that sometimes it's hard to do when you're going slow, but once you get kind of a feel for it, it fits in up to speed fairly easily and fairly naturally. And it's almost like surfing. It's like bands are playing very much. It's impossible for me to keep track of the roll of the banjo. And the hemiola, too. Hemiola and the banjo roll, to me, are very, very similar in the fact that they're a repeating lick. They're a 3-note on a 4-beat thing. So that hemiola, let's do one in C here. E, C, G. So that's 1 beat. Here's your 2nd beat. Here's the 3rd beat. And here's the 4th beat. You're back. Now, if you want to do it one more time, you're kind of stuck because you got to start on. You can keep going on that. But that thing goes so fast that it's impossible to keep track of which note I just hit. So I can count it slow. I can go like this. But up to speed, impossible. And what you have to do is you have to just get a feel for how long 4 beats lasts. And you just go that until you've got 4 beats. You feel that 4 beats. So that's what I mean by surfing. You can't count it. I can't count it. I can't count banjo rolls. Da, 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 da. I have to do that roll going. And I go until I feel that amount of time, and then I bail out of it and go to the next thing. So that's what the hemiola is like, too. And that's what this sandwich lick is like. It's hard to do sometimes when you're sitting there trying to think it out. So but if I do it up to speed, see? Now I hear it, you see. I hear what it sounds like, and I'm able to play it, and I'm able to play it instinctively and improvisationally to where I can do it automatically without having to necessarily think about it. And I switch back and forth there between a folded scale and a sandwich scale, and that's what you got to do to practice that. But to me, that second one sounds so much more mandolinistic than the folded scale. I mean, that's kind of cool, but this is neater. Can I do it? I need to get it worked into a tremolo where I come back and do that. Get the bottom part of bread on the tremolo. those are things on how to try to make that mandolin or your guitar or your banjo have a unique voice. Find the unique voice and find those little quirks. On guitar, for instance, cross picking. Nothing can mean cross pick quite like a guitar does. The notes are in the place to where you want to cross pick it. You want to drone notes together. So like on this, for instance, I was saying there's a G here, and the next G is way up here. There's two matching Gs. That's a long stretch. On guitar, it's a 7-fret stretch. So you can play the same note in two different places very easily. That makes it easy to cross pick and to do floaty licks, where you're doing this note here that you normally put on here, and you're doing two-finger things, and you're making floaty licks. Floaty licks don't work quite as well for me on mandolin. They do to a point. So I do a floaty lick at the end of Lonesome Fiddle Blues. And what I do is take that E and the F, and I play the F closed. Like that. And I can't do it because I'm used to it at speed. But that's a floaty lick. Like that. Playing some open notes and some closed notes is good. Let's see if I can get that into context here, because it does sound pretty cool. It sounds Chris Thile-ish to me. Not quite, but you know, Chris is so good at doing those things. So, okay, that's a floaty lick. That sounds pretty mandolinistic to me too. You know, that's a Chris Thile inspired lick, and he's really, really good at doing those things, making these descending licks like that just seem to go on forever. And it's like, how, you know, he must have a mandolin lick. It's twice what mine is, but it's not. He's just got that technique down for that. So, all right, so think about that a little bit in your mandolin playing or your guitar playing or your banjo playing. Think about what it is that makes this a unique instrument. On mandolin specifically, if you've not been aware of or exposed to the sandwich lick, play with it a little bit and see. You'll hear it when you start playing it here. It's getting me out of the plinky mode of mandolin playing. So, you know, when I first went in, I was coming off guitar, and I just wanted to pick everything, you know. Oh, well, you know, Lonesome Fiddle Blues, okay? And that's fine, but it's all notes. I like this better for a mandolinistic solo, so let's do that again. That's so much more mandolinistic. Doing the little double stops, that's how you use them. You can cross pick them, or you can do your sandwich lick in there. You can do that sandwich lick in there. So let's do it again. There we go. I'm making it up on the fly, so cut me a little slack here. But I am trying to pull that in there, so let's see. Fun stuff you can do on those double stops. Like that. That's so much more mandolinistic sounding to me than that's good, but it's just single note stuff. So, you know. See you later.